Lester. So let's go on a journey of over 200 years through anecdotes and important events, which follows a small community from the Punjab that overcame tremendous odds to become a pivotal military force which conquered northern India, eventually leading to a Sikh empire. Now, Sikh military history is sometimes only really seen through the lens of World War I and II, but this book is going to travel back, and the man behind it is Gurinder Singh Mann, who is a Leicester-based historian and director of the Sikh Museum Initiative. He joins us now. Hey, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Really nice to see you and hear you, if I can say that. And thank you to be on the show today.
So tell us, how did the idea for this book to come about? 200 years to capture in those pages. That's quite a feat, Gurinder.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually written a book a couple of years ago called The British and the Sikhs. That was in 2020, essentially. And this was during lockdown. And whilst I was researching for that particular book, I was kind of almost on the kind of working towards this secondary book as well, to this kind of series, essentially. So, I mean, as a Sikh historian for many, many years, I just wanted to actually create a concise guide which kind of gives that unique kind of relationship that the Sikhs had with other powers in northern India, including, the Mughals, the Afghans, Marathas, Rohillas, even groups most people have never even heard of as well. So I just thought it'd be very, very good to transpose the kind of reader, not just from the 18th century, the Sikh Empire, Anglo-Sikh wars, and then through to the colonial kind of Raj period as well. So really, really going into depth in terms of what the Sikhs were about in terms, not just military, but also in terms of governance as well. So it's like covering all aspects of what we call a Sikh empire. But interestingly, this time around, I've also covered and given a light to Sikh women as well, which is always underplayed when it comes to historical relationships, when it comes to what forms an army and things like that.
Why did you want to tell this story, Gurinder?
I think what's really important is that just as you kind of stated right at the start, we normally equate, or there's a certain population which equates the Sikhs with World War I and World War II, and then, that's where the kind of story kind of either starts or either ends. What I really wanted to do was just not just a book just for the Sikhs, but also for a wider readership in terms of actually saying, well, okay, if you only know about the Sikhs from World War I and World War II, then why don't we transport you back, to the 18th century and show you where the kind of origins and beginnings were. If you are a Sikh, this is like a great book for you to actually understand a lot more about the origins, but kind of bring you up to speed in terms of the pivotal moments during that time, essentially.
What are some of the things that you're going to discover on that journey, Gurinder? When you've been sort of documenting this, what have been the moments for us non-historians that you would say, that is super interesting and this jumped out to me?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of points. I mean, one really interesting point is that we can push the boundaries of when the British and the Sikhs actually had communications as well. So normally we look at it in terms of the Sikh Empire period, which is about 1800 onwards. The book actually goes into the relationship and kind of goes back to the late 1700s. So that's a really pivotal bit of information. I mean, the Anglo-Sikh wars, pitting the Sikh Empire against the East India Company, most people are aware of. But I've gone into detail and actually shown quite a number of maps as well, which previously doesn't show the Sikh positions, for instance. So I've actually kind of added on the Sikh positions, and I've also kind of also alluded to the public collections and private collections where there's Sikh relics and artifacts as well, going back to the 1700s onwards, and, includes like various museums across the UK as well, like the Royal Armouries, the National Army Museum and so forth, essentially.
Now, you mentioned there that the story doesn't limit itself to the male Sikh experience, but also focuses on female warriors as well, a story that we don't really hear. You mentioned that yourself. What can you tell us about that? I
think, the actual lack of female, I wouldn't even use the word warriors, characters, individuals, personalities, is always missing when it comes to history, and especially when it comes to martial history as well. That could be probably any culture really, or historical group. But I thought for the Sikhs, we've kind of lost a trick, if that makes sense, because I think the Sikh women were just as powerful and as tough as the Sikh men as well. So I've alluded to two specific individuals. One is Sada Kaur, who was part of a confederacy known as the Kanayas, and she actually helped Maharaja Ranjit Singh actually attain his kind of Sikh empire. So I really wanted to focus on her as part of one of the chapters. And the other one is Saib Kaur, a very young Patiala princess who was able to command an army as well. And she actually fought against the Marathas, but also fought against a Britisher named George Thomas, which is very, very interesting as well. He was an Irishman, not part of the East India Company, but, it was a very, very fascinating tale. So I thought it would be very, very good to actually look through the lens of how we should be looking at Sikh military history through various lenses, if I can say that, and, to bring people up to speed in terms of how we should kind of, respect the women who have actually come before us, really.
And how are you telling that story? Is this going to be like a history book? How have you decided to share those stories when we do read them?
Yeah, I mean, technically, it is kind of chronological, but it's not like 1701, 1702, so forth. It is like literally through the characters as well. So like I said, through the lens and the eyes of history. So I've got other individuals like Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, who was like the head of the Sikh confederacies in the 18th century, for instance. I've got like even referring to like innovators and technologists as well, by the name of Sikh called Lena Singh Majithia, who was like, when the British met him, they just thought, well, you can't be from the Punjab because the scientific knowledge you actually hold is almost to the equaling of someone from the Western world. So, it was encounters like this, which I think I really wanted to highlight. So whilst not chronological, it does go through like individuals in terms of how they actually adopted themselves and adapted themselves throughout the ages as well.
I think that's a great way to tell the story as well, Gurinder, is through those lived experiences of what those women and men all experienced and the encounters that they may well have had, many of which will probably surprise us because they're not necessarily stories that have been told in this way. Often they've been told through that lens, as we mentioned, of World War I and World War II. Okay, so if you do want to read the book, get hold of the book, expand your mind, what would be the best way, Gurinder?
Okay, so the book's published by Hellion and Company, and their website's hellion.co.uk. It's available on Amazon as well, so you can get it from the usual outlets, really. So yeah, I think it'll be a very good read.
Brilliant, if I say so myself.
Absolutely.
Gurinder Isman of Joy, thank you so much for your time. Gurinder Singh Manna, Leicester-based historian, director of the Sikh Museum Initiative, The Rise of the Sikh Soldier, the Sikh Warrior Through the Ages.